It is very scary doing the capital raising portion, especially when you're the lead GP. How much did you guys end up raising?
Ours, we did about 1.5.
How the heck do you raise $1.5 million for the very first time? How many are on your email list?
I spent 3 years building SARE Ladies. SARE stands for Subtle Asian Real Estate. Commercial real estate is like being in a country club. Like you cannot get in without riding on someone's coattails. I'm in the place in my life where it's just, if I'm not doing something that doesn't scare the living crap out of me, it's not worth doing anymore.
Ooh. So Anita, Will, thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Obviously where the unit count is right now, and then I want to go into the origin stories and how you guys got your superpowers.
I think our unit count's a little bit under 100 right now. It's about like 88. So if you count our single family properties and then our recent acquisition of Emerald Point in Irving, Texas.
And so one thing that's super interesting is that you guys got into multifamily as a lead GP on the GP side.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Took a few years of work, but definitely, came out the door running.
And that was how many units again for that one?
76.
76. So not many people go straight into 76. So I want to dive. That's the trailer right there. Is if you want to jump onto that level, I want you guys to lay out the blueprint. And then origin stories, superpowers. How did you guys get to where you guys are today?
Yeah, so we landed at 76 unit Emerald Point in Irving, Texas, as lead GP with our partner, Tony Lin, who was my mentor and now my business partner. I think mainly we were able to do that because I spent 3 years building SARE Ladies. SARE stands for Subtle Asian Real Estate. And it's a sister brand of SARE, and we are a 24,000 AAPI network investor group in pretty much all over the country, but really, really focused on, West Coast, California, coastal. So I think it was because I built this brand first and then got into multifamily was how I got noticed fairly quickly. And I think that's sort of the difference, I think, between people that are just getting started. Most people, when they do get started, right, this is also how I started, is looking for guru groups. You go find mentorships and you do LP investments. So you invest passively into other people's deals. So you're kind of learning basically as a wallflower until you eventually get into someone's site of a GP that is able to help you into the multifamily space. But, I think because I worked several years on building a following, building a brand, showing that I had an investor base early on was how I really got, skyrocketed into this first position.
I think one thing I would give huge credit to for Anita is having a vision. And so I've worked in, corporate life for almost like 2 decades. And so it's really hard to kind of get stuck in the minutia of things, like more of the tactical. I think Anita, her superpower, if I can kind of go to that transition, is really kind of being that looking at from like a 30,000 feet view of things and not seeing anything as a potential issue or obstacle, but it's just opportunities. And so very optimistic way of how she kind of approaches things. So when she kind of had the original vision of starting SARE Ladies, also kind of going to multifamily, it all kind of came together and it was a lot to kind of take in coming from the other side. So
Totally. I mean, the bigger problems you solve, the more money you can earn. All right, so as we talk about backstories and context, give me a little bit more. You said that you built the brand, but in order to build the brand, like what are obviously like the career backgrounds, educational backgrounds, and then we can go talk about, as you guys build your portfolio and then built SARE. I need to go first.
I'm a lover of cities. I come from a built background, so I studied as an architect, and so real estate and buildings were always a part of my narrative. I worked in the best architecture firms in the world and, worked and I discovered pretty much architecture was really not for me. And so I went the real estate route. And so I had been investing pretty early on, and I was really lucky to do that. My parents were interested in real estate also, but also really, single family cash buy, like super Asian, and I decided to kind of go into that route after I got my MBA. Yeah, and go into syndication.
Okay, and then Will, what about you?
I kind of just married into it, but but I mean, I do have some properties to contribute to our portfolio, but I went more of the house hacking route. So I think I have a property in San Diego, one that we bought in Berkeley, both of which we've lived in. And so that's just kind of more or less like how I acquired it. I started more around that 2010 timeframe as more of like an accidental landlord. Like I didn't really know what I was doing. So even for a number of years, I was like, oh, I need to report this on my tax return. So that was a number of years ago. So I'm out of the out of the audit period right now. But it took a while to kind of figure out, and I think eventually we kind of reached this point is kind of have to treat it as a business.
Okay, so you guys both started on the single family side. Will, yours was house hacking, which I think is still the best way ever to get started.
Absolutely.
And then you started with buying single family rentals where?
Yeah, in Irvine.
Okay.
Yeah, so I went to USC, and then I just bought in really safe, good school areas to start with, and also kind of house hacked, but lived in it, and moved on to the next one. That was my first property.
So you also started house hacking then?
Yeah.
Oh, see, yeah, that's like the best way. You can lease them out down. 2 years you wanted to sell it, you can defer a whole bunch of gains, or not even defer, but you don't have to even pay any capital gains on those. So
I would say if I had to start all over again, I would do it if I could as a student, because I feel like the student housing, I could, borrow the money, live with my friends, I would be, debt free out of college right away.
You could also refinance too, like cash out refinance
Yeah.
and then buy another property. So
I'll be teaching our daughter that for sure.
okay, and then it sounds like you guys both invested in your adult lives before you guys got married and met.
Yeah.
What was how'd you guys meet?
We
you
met.
want to hear Anita's version or
We
my
met on
version?
Hinge.
So-
We met on Hinge. Yeah.
Okay, and then as you was the part of the relationship dynamics, I think, and actually, I have never interviewed another married couple on the podcast.
Josh, I'll say this. I think, and I tell this as when people kind of wonder why Anita and I are kind of doing this real estate stuff, like as not as business partners, but also as kind of like husband and wife. And so I think there's a earlier part when we were on our dating journey. I remember this conversation, we were coming back from, I think we were like around driving from Marin back to San Francisco, and Anita was talking about the idea of partnership. And so I think the way that she kind of explained like being a partner, all the different attributes of someone having your back, of someone like being there with you through the good times and the rough times, all the ways that she described it, I was like, I want that. And so I think that's the way that we kind of carry it, not just in our marital relationship, but into our business relationship. And we try to kind of support each other and focus on what we're good at, what I'm good at, what she's good at, and try to kind of stay in our own lane and try to, kind of graft a little bit more of that skill set upon each other. Like I know for myself, one of the things I try to do more is like try to look at life more joyfully. And that's the way that Anita looks at it. So, and there are other attributes of mine that she picks up too. So.
Dang, good luck.
Right.
That was deep, man. That was good.
How do I follow that?
I know. That's like a love story, a business love story in the making, but a really sweet way to look at it. How did you guys approach talking about finances as you guys were thinking about getting more serious?
I think that, I've been lucky. I feel like my mom, my grandmother was always like, you have to get to know the finances. They're business women, right? They always knew that it was integral part of the relationship. So I think also because we also, met each other a little bit older, that it was something that I was just really upfront about. We're just like, we don't need to dive into it right away, maybe in our early relationship, but we have to talk about how we spend money and, what is important to us and what is stuff that we're willing to spend more money on, stuff that we're willing to save on, and really try to get in sync with that in regards to our financial philosophy.
Although her dad's biggest fear was that someone would marry her for her money. So
Okay, can I probe that a little bit? Just for fun? And you can feel free not to answer.
Okay.
Or just how you approach it. How do you guys, now that you're married, you guys have been married for how long?
like 3.5 years now.
Okay. Separate or together?
Oh, together 100%. So
Bank accounts are all 100%. All right.
it's, I think going through, so I do all our finances and I keep her in the loop, but it's interesting because of the way that Anita's family approached it, like everything was like kind of commingled. So it actually took me a few years to try to untangle everything, like especially like around tax time, like, all right, where's this coming from? What source is this? And so they kind of just like, everything's just kind of more agnostic of that. So I like to put things in like nice little buckets, and that's more or less like how my family operates, is a little bit more independently. So, but I appreciate the fact that there's transparency. And I think that was something that Anita also vocalized when we first started dating. She had this term called radical transparency. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was my burner days. Yeah.
What is radical transparency?
It's like it's one of like the Burning Man philosophies.
Okay.
But I kind of picked up all that. I like really loved it, but it's just sort of always making sure that no matter what it is, that we tell each other what's on our mind, so we can work through it together.
Yeah, I was also actually, when my wife and I were engaged and we were talking about like what do we do finance wise, she was actually always separate bank accounts. And I was like, no, because I mean, just for my parents, we're all in it together 100%. Like this either works together or we're like, we're crashing together. And so that was a conversation that we had to have and that we had to work through. I guess we won. She saw the light. But okay, so that's the partnership dynamic here. You talked about one of the biggest catalysts for the next step was building a brand first.
Yes.
So explain that to me, starting with SARE and how that grew. Like, how did that become such a huge success?
I think where I started from, even in my MBA days, I was really passionate about working with women, and this was when I really fully transitioned into real estate life. This was in that COVID where everyone was really kind of thinking about like, what am I doing with my life these days? And, what is my work really for? And so this also kind of happened, transition around the time where, AAPI hate crimes were really happening around the city. And I'm not sure if you remember like the stickers. Like, I was like, well, where do we become in a place where stickers need to be on people's windows about like not hating people that look like us, So I was really, I had a reckoning about my own personal identity as an Asian person, as a woman. And then I think the sudden moment, like the moment that really like tipped it off for me was when I was buying, pepper spray and batons for my 70-year-old parents, because, there were people that looked like them that were being attacked on the buses in San Francisco. So I was just like, what are we even doing? So I just kind of had a moment of really needing to lean into my own community and finding out my own identity and building up my community. And I just really felt that pull. And so I had known about SARE for a little bit of time, but it kind of just pushed me to be like, meet Annie, who was one of the partners at SARE. And I just said, hey, I want to start the women's part of SARE. And she's like, well, many women have tried, but I don't think you're going to be able to do it. And then she didn't even expect that I would be able to take it this far. But even Nelson was just like, who was the other partner? He was like, well, you were just too big to ignore. And I felt that, right? Because I started putting out content. I started with the podcast, just started finding other women that were just questioning the same things that I was questioning, which was my identity in a world of real estate, which was predominantly white and male. You go into every conference and that's all you see. And so I started talking about things that I was curious about, like things about honoring your parents and your finances, or about taking care of them through, into beyond retirement, or filial piety, or even perfectionism, about being a straight A Asian, how that impacts your the way that you do deals, right? Does that deal have to be perfect? Did you learn that from being a straight A Asian, thinking that everything had to be perfect, or coming out as a shy Asian girl? And how do you bust through that in a male-dominated white world, right? And so once I started just talking about it more and more, people started gravitating towards the podcast. Then I had a dream of doing women's summits where I could sit together with women in person and work through them and I did it in Oahu, and I did 3 of them actually after that. And then I put together an investors trip out to Dallas where I brought women investors to tour neighborhoods and actually do deals. So all these things were kind of built one by one, and it eventually just became my brand. And it didn't really feel like it was work because it was just authentically me. And I think the currency of social media these days is authenticity. So I think that when people see that about you, then you can build that brand. And once you see a following behind you, they see investor money, right? So
if I can add to that one, I mean, kind of looking at it from a marketing standpoint, I think Anita's brand's kind of been more iterative, but I think that part about having authenticity in there, it's also kind of helped build community. And I think that's the way that we look at SARE, like Linfinity Group, basically all of our friends and our investors, they all kind of come from those places because we have shared values. That's even how we selected our partners for our recent acquisition was, hey, not only do they look like us, but we also share that same kind of immigrant mentality, like because either you're first generation or you're second generation. So
Yeah, I think the community point is like that's like the net of everything. What you started with, Sarah, ladies, and all of that. I think a lot of people sometimes will ask and say, man, you do a meetup group, you do these events, you do all of this. Is it oversaturated? Is it too much? And you took an interesting approach because now you went and you found an online community first, and maybe that was because it was COVID, so no one was going outside anyways. But you aligned yourself and you added so much value to the group that Nelson couldn't ignore you. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people will like push, but won't actually show up so much that you can't not be seen. Mm-hmm. And it seems like that's what you did. And so as you made some of these events, I want to know, like the first event you made, was it, let's take the Oahu trip, because that's a big commitment. That's money on your side to book stuff. I'm going to plan this huge trip and this retreat. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know if people are actually going to want a vacation with me. Or did you already know?
I had no idea. Everything was just like, plunging into the deep end. And you're just like, well, it's like you're coming from a good place, mm-hmm. and people are going to follow you or they're not. And every time, I mean, I still have that right now. Like, I'm still planning things that scare the living crap out of me, not sure that people would buy tickets, pay money to come hang out with me. Not just like, not only just fly like 6 hours, but pay money to come hear me speak, the people that I bring over to speak, right? So it's a kind of a bet every single time, but so far it's worked out. Yeah.
What's the last event you had to cancel because you didn't get enough?
I don't think I've had to cancel one because I hadn't had enough, but
nice.
I had to cancel for other reasons. I did have to cancel the last summit because of other real estate related reasons, but not because I haven't had enough people. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that for one of our meetups that we did, I want to say 2 years ago, I was trying to do it at a winery over in Livermore. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't get enough signups. And I was like, man, like, I had maybe 20 people signed up, but I really needed 40 just to break even. Mm-hmm. And we were like a month to it. And it was time to like, well, are you putting down the deposit or not?
Yeah.
And I chickened out and I said, nah. We ended up still hosting the event, but moving it from a winery actually to the apartment clubhouse downstairs.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe why I haven't, I think I've done that. For sure, I've done that too, right? Yeah. It's like maybe it's not as, as big as maybe I just expected it, but I think that's not a you thing. It's more of a market demand thing, right? Or it's like I think it's a data point, but it's not exactly like it's like maybe, I feel like conferences are really hard these days. Meetups are really hard these days. People can't even afford eggs. Like, so, people used to be throwing money all the time for conferences. And now it's just like intentionally one or two now. People are conferenced out.
Yeah, I think if you want to host a meetup, you have to be willing to sit at a bar alone. Because not everyone's going to show up on time. Someone might not even show up at all.
No one shows up on time. Yeah.
And every single month, I sit at a bar alone for 30 minutes. Okay. You grew Ladies just because you were so ingrained in a community and you found a need, and someone just had to say, cool, let's also just do this fun stuff together, and also learn and find some financial benefit, some investment along the way. Talk to me about multifamily. Was that always a goal for both of you as you guys got married? And what was that process like? And what were the steps you took?
Was multifamily our goal getting married? I mean, or after we got married?
It's after we got married, so yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think, I mean, I don't think that I've ever imagined that we would be able to buy. I didn't even know that you could buy these kinds of properties. Like you just kind of pass by it all the time, but you don't really imagine that you would be able to own and operate one of these things. And it really wasn't until I started getting a SARE, learning about multifamily from one of my other mentors, Hua Wen, and she's told me about multifamily syndications that I was like, oh, this is kind of really jiving with what I learned in business school. It's kind of felt like more like taking over a business and running that. And I felt like that was really for me.
I think being able to scale was something that we were looking at. I think also kind of going back to like if we were gonna kind of stay down the single family route, kind of go more STRs, like maybe do Airbnbs and et cetera, like I think capital is always going to be a constraint. So I think that's kind of where the syndication model was very interesting. Was because you're pulling together not just your own cash, but cash that other people are kind of bringing in order to kind of buy something that you couldn't buy individually. So which is super appealing.
Yeah, and as you thought, or like as I thought about multifamily, and even now, we say, cool, we co-GP'd on this apartment in Dallas, and you have people who aren't in the space, and you talk about how much you bought it for, how many units there are. They're like, wait, that's not a real thing, right? Like, how do you actually buy something like that? It seems untangible. And you said from the ideation of it to the execution, how many years was that?
About 3 years, I think, start to finish, yeah.
And what were the different levels of unlock for you guys to say, okay, I've earned the right to, I think I can do this next one. Okay, I need to do this, right? I mean, at the baseline, you gotta have, the group's gotta have the net worth to pull it off. You have to have X amount of liquidity, depending on whenever you listen to this episode, right? Which is usually 10%. And then, of course, you have to have the track record too. So those are three really, really big things.
I can say to that. I mean, I think the biggest unlock periods were probably when I had the podcast and I invited Paul Peoples to come on it.
Yeah.
He agreed, and he was the one that really helped us lead us into the deal with Ashley Cow at Old Capital Lending. And of course, the other one is meeting Tony Lin, who sponsored the SARE Ladies event first. That's how I actually met him. And then he said to not join Brad Sumrock's group for now and just come with Linfinity. And that was maybe another unlock. And the third one is obviously getting our deal, but also doing our capital raise for the first time, right? We were largely untested, but we had the support of Tony, but he was like, kind of pushed us fully into it, right? I was doing a lot of work and gaining traction and education, putting out a lot of content out there, but no one has ever put down such a big check for me, right? And so I think when we were able to be the biggest raiser on our team and we were really able to tap that network, who really already knew that we were doing multifamily real estate investing and actually submitted checks into us, that was another unlock. And then now that we've had our first deal, 0 to 1 is the hardest, but 1 beyond is much, much easier. So
yeah, I think it's like timing. I think kind of going back to that for phrase of success is basically kind of like timing and luck and preparation. So, and I think there's a lot of preparation behind the scenes, like the relationship building aspects. They don't happen overnight. And so that would took months, not of years, but it's also kind of proving to, like, I remember Paul, I think this was like last year, we were at like a chicken and pickle event, and he was like, I need you to go talk to this guy. And I was like, I don't know who that guy is. Like, just go talk to him. And it ended up being a lender. Like, we didn't end up using like Colliers. We ended up kind of going more Freddie Mac, like the regions, but it was a good way to just him saying, I want you to put yourself out there. I want you to press the flesh to meet, to build these relationships, because it will be fruitful, not just for your first opportunity, but for your next opportunity. So I think be able to listen to some of that guidance and just take a leap.
So the initial unlock for both of you was someone, right? Someone showing you the way, who you need to meet, who you need to talk to, and also just like showing that it's actually possible, because I think everyone understands the steps, but until, and I don't know anyone who's ever done it like virtually, but until you've actually like seen that person and they let you like into the books a bunch. Like Tony is like very transparent in Linfinity. So it's, you just got to show up.
I think there's like this one point of kind of that concept of 0 to 1, kind of going from not having a deal to them kind of being lead GP on a deal. Like it's very, very rare. I don't even know if it's possible to do it without someone opening the door for you. And so kind of going back to the point, it is relationships.
I think we talked about it, how it's like, it is, I mean, to be transparent, commercial real estate is like being in a country club. Like you cannot get in without riding on someone's coattails. That's just what it is. You know, or you have to ride on someone who has already been in that club for a really long time to introduce you, right? So you really do have to make those relationships be based and show them that it's, you know, I think the thing about mentorship is that it's a mutual thing. You choose each other, right? As much as I chose Tony, Tony chose me, right? And so be choosable. And the way to be choosable is like to show that you're invested into it and that you've already made the pre-commitments as much as you possibly can, that you are in it, that whatever they're investing their time into is also worthwhile.
And you did that by obviously adding so much value to SARE early on that then helped solidify your position with SARE and also just with that investor group. For me, it's bringing a camera and a mic everywhere.
Yeah.
Because it's the easiest way, whether you stand out or not, so it's the easiest way to talk to someone when you have some type of platform.
Yeah.
How many hours do you spend a week on SARE?
Oh my God. It's so much now. I mean, a little
Even
bit
before.
less these days,
Okay.
but I would say almost every day I would be doing something. But but I am pretty much the one that's pretty much fully running SARE Ladies and podcast events, accountability groups, networking, you know, and if you count the people that I'm always talking to because of SARE Ladies, oh my gosh, every single day, actually. Yeah, and I think that's also the beautiful part about it too, is that I'm constantly talking to people that arise from there that's interested in investing or someone that I'm even just trying to bounce ideas off of. I think SARE has really given me a lot of our thought partners to basically reflect a lot of our investments. Like, how would you do this differently? What do you think about like these? We're going through a lot of like immigration issues now. How you mitigate risk, or how do I deal with this with my office manager? So these things are, you know, people that you talk to and kind of need to work out these ideas with. So almost
Yeah, I think that all makes sense. I think like right now, kind of going through like one of our thought partners is Ian Cruz. He has his deal right now in Cincinnati, and so he's kind of going through the whole lead GP process as well. And so we can I'm using some of our experience, like, yes, this is normal right now for Freddie to kind of drag its feet because of enhanced due diligence, and this is the reason X, Y, and Z. Because until you kind of go through the process conceptually, you understand all the different steps, but it's a different thing doing it. It's like earlier this week, I started playing competitive tennis again. Like I hadn't done that for a number of years since like COVID. Like my mind knew what I wanted to do, but my body afterwards was like, what did you just do to me? So because it forgot some of that component of it, so I had to kind of rebuild some of those muscles. So
You said that it was very scary, and it is very scary doing the capital raising portion, especially when you're the lead GP, which is why we haven't even done it yet. How much did you guys have to, what was the total raise?
3.25.
3.25. And how much did you guys end up raising, your specific group?
Ours, like we did about 1.5, I would say.
So how the heck do you raise $1.5 million for the very first time?
Good question.
Yeah. I feel like I blacked out during that period. It was such a whirlwind.
I'll kind of kick it off a little bit. I think when we were looking through it, like there's the total amount that we kind of have to raise, and then we have our different kind of sponsor teams within there. So it was like us, it was Saron Chen with her group, and then also the Blue Ember team as well. And so we kind of just kind of go off of what's the different kind of commitments from each kind of sponsor team, and then try to see how do we kind of work our way backwards. meaning that, hey, do people even know that we have a deal? So, and I think each team had a little bit different experience kind of going through it, because like, I think for Anita and myself, because people knew that this is something that she was interested in doing, multifamily, it was a little bit easy because of SARE Ladies, it was a little bit easier to kind of have that brand awareness, so to speak. And so then it was just a matter about converting over some of those people into like, hey, actually being able to kind of get the check or the commitment, going from soft commitment to then hard commitment, then kind of going through signing the subscription documents, and then also finally kind of getting the check. So I just kind of looked at through it as basically a marketing funnel.
Was this the first time that you guys raised money? Have you guys done like private money lending or anything like that too for raising it all?
This is the first time we've raised this much money. Yeah.
But any raise at all? Or have you guys like done?
At this scale, this was like this. Yeah,
this is
the first time. This is the first time thing. So conceptually, we understood how to do it. I think it was a different experience going through it, and I think we believe we could.
Yeah.
I think it was good because Anita was a little bit more optimistic. I was a little bit more conservative on that end, and so I think that's, you end up kind of being in one of those extremes. Like either you're overconfident and you can raise a lot, or you're like kind of like, I don't know, so I'm gonna kind of go a little bit, be more conservative around how much we think we can raise. So,
And then if we're gonna work the marketing funnel backwards a little bit, just generalize some numbers here. If you had to raise $1.5 million, if everyone did a 100K minimum, then you need 15 people. If it's 50K minimum, that's 30. So let's just say you needed to get 30-ish people.
Yep.
How many investor calls did you guys take?
I think it varied. I know I definitely took at least a dozen, I would say. So and also kind of using email communications as well, answering some of the questions. But I think this is where I kind of give a lot of credit to Anita, because most of the people that invested were coming from her base. So I think it was an eye-opening experience for me to be able to kind of say like, all right, next time we raise, like William's got to do a little bit of a better job, because I'm just competitive like that. So she opened the doors, but I definitely helped close it, so that it was a good partnership in that manner. But and I think the second component was we had 100,000 and 250,000 is kind of like those different class of shares. So, and I think that made it a little bit easier, because like, hey, if I'm talking to someone that's willing to do the 250 versus like 100, then it makes it a little bit easier to kind of also prioritize times. Like, so that's the two nuggets I would say comes top of mind.
And then tactically, Anita, SARE had 24,000 people. How many are on your email list?
How much are that?
It's like a couple hundred.
700, right?
All right, so 700 maybe-ish on the email list.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, in total, then I guess, if you're reaching out to at the high level, right, through SARE, you have tens of thousands on a deeper personal
Of course,
one.
we can't raise like that. We can't just like throw it out in the SARE group.
Yeah.
But we would have to. These will all have to be warm connections already. So
Pre-existing relationships.
Yes.
So
You guys did 506B.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And so then you have your warm connections. And what was that process like for you? You have a little filter in your funnel of, great, these are all people that I actually know.
Well, I'll say that, when I was getting into syndications and like Perry Zhang, a CEO cash flow portal, I was like, hey, so, I'm ready to launch into the next step. He's like, the best thing you can do is you can write down a list of people that that have money, and you estimate how much you think they can invest.
Yeah.
Then you go try to get coffee with every single one of these, like you don't have to tell them you have a deal. You don't have to have a deal, but just let them know that, like you're nurturing this relationship. So I think that's kind of how we started. And of course, SARE and how they engaged with me on the SARE Ladies platform is also how we also got to sort of nurture those leads.
100%. For like my first raise, and this is before I ever started doing a lot of the real estate content on social media, but as we were just getting in, like our first deals in Columbus for single family homes, and we would post about it, I would just randomly put, hey, who's ever thought about doing real estate too? Right? And anytime anyone's clicked yes on the stories or commented in the comments, I would just put their name on a spreadsheet and say, hey, they had some type of positive reaction to this.
Okay.
And these are all people that I already knew just from past life.
Yeah.
And so when it was time for me, my first raise was for a flip that we were trying to do in Columbus. Ended up being a BRRRR deal. but we wanted to raise 200 grand, and I had 80 people on a spreadsheet of like, all right, let's go have those coffee chats now and see who's actually wanting to play.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with, you definitely need to have spreadsheets. You definitely need to kind of be tracking. It's like, all right, where's like, even just being able to say like, hey, what's the likelihood that this person will invest? Because even as we were going through capital raising, like sometimes it's just bad timing for people. Like they're not as liquid and it's not like something against us. They're just like, it's just bad timing. And so they're like, hey, based off this conversation, I think qualitatively, they're probably leaning towards not investing, but we're still going to do the follow-up. But hey, here's this person that says like they're highly interested, but maybe they have like a really intensive W-2 and I just need to do like a lot of follow-up, try to be not too annoying, but also just kind of doing like actually being, follow up in a respectable manner.
Yeah.
So
I'll say I feel like I really leaned into Will's expertise on this, and I think it's incredibly useful in capital raising to be in marketing, just because it's like the art of the follow up and like the art of like nurturing the leads and like it's a science. It's a marketing science.
It's just a marketing campaign. That's pretty much what it is.
He thought about it so simply. I was just like, oh my gosh, I would just email them once. I don't know, or something like that. Or even like, and like, not taking personally someone, maybe a close or family friend, like family or friend that, doesn't want to put money into your deal, like don't take that personally. It's just a timing thing. Or maybe some people just want to be more, they're just more late adopters, like me. I'm like, no earlier than 3rd gen tech for me. So I totally understand that people just want to see you kind of prove your work a little bit before they invest their hard-earned 401k money into your deal, right?
Totally. It took me, I mean, for my family to like see me from being the nephew
Yes.
to, he's an adult doing things now. It took like 3 years and, a dozen real estate deals, all talking through Thanksgiving and Christmas for them to be like, okay, what are you actually doing now?
Yeah. It's actually known, like I'm also a realtor too, but it's known in the realtor space, do not rely on your family and friends to get your first deals.
Yeah.
It's very hard to whittle yourself out of like, little 5-year-old Joshy.
Yeah. Totally.
Right?
Totally. I'm the dude spilling popcorn, you know?
And they'll bring up like, are you sure you lose your keys all the time? I'm like, I lost my keys when I was like 17. It's not the same. I'm not the same person.
I guess like in a way, it's like with family and friends, you really do have to rebrand yourself in that, especially with family. It's like being able to see you not just like as this like little kid, but as actual an adult that actually knows the numbers and has gone through the due diligence and has all the knowledge within there, and just being able to say like, hey, can you trust me with a large check? So
was there a point in the capital raise where you didn't think that you were going to make it?
Well, there were days where the numbers kept adjusting, right? It's what people don't know is that like like when you're doing a presentation, this is how much money we need, but when you're actually in escrow, that amount of money can move, right, based on a number of different things that's not even within our own power, right? So our raise goal had to move up a bit because of something that happened eventually in due diligence with the seller, and this is also another reason to have a good mentor with you, because they are the ones that like are really pressuring, like making sure that everything is in line, so that your raise doesn't have to keep moving up and down all the time, because you have to keep finding more investors and chasing them. It's really hard, and and also like to have a good seller too, right? It's super important, right? Our seller kind of pulled himself off the brake. I mean, or the gas pedal, which you shouldn't, right? That he kind of let rent kind of go, and he just kind of like, he was already gone. His mind was already like on to the next thing.
So it impacted the NOI. The NOI then impacted like how much the lender wanted to kind of give us for proceeds, and that kind of was a little bit of a gap for how much we needed to kind of raise. So it's always be underwriting is definitely one lesson that we learned, because the number does kind of move. And I think it's like everyone's situation with how they're funding it is different. I think the biggest pain in my butt throughout the process was trying to learn how to do the self-directed IRA, not for myself, but to teach all the other investors like, yeah, we can do this. And I was like, do you even have a self-directed IRA? Like, is this the right one? So I think I actually had to create like a little bit of a document list that I kind of shared with one of our other thought partners when he was going through the capital raise, because it's a lot of successive steps and oftentimes people aren't prepared. And capital raising, it's like you're going through it from end to end. It's about 53 days, but essentially that's how long it took us to kind of raise that amount of money in terms of like the commitments. Yeah, we got that pretty quickly, but then you gotta have to follow up with people, and then like, hey, people drop out, and then new people come back on. So it's like that starting, stopping. I think it's difficult. So always just kind of be prepared. Like, hey, over raise a little bit, and then that's a good problem to have rather than being under. So.
So always raise, always be underrated, always be underwriting.
Yeah.
Nina, what was your lessons learned from this first deal?
Yeah, I think lessons about the transaction whole. Yeah.
Transaction. I mean, even takeover now too.
I think. Oh yeah, even takeover.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, now that we've been in it for how long? 4 months now.
Yeah, 4 months and 4 months and change.
4 months and change. I would say. Yeah, I think we make sure that we're there every single month. And I like that because we're constantly trying to find different areas that our managers are missing, right? Just this last trip, it was just like post rainstorm, and so we found lots of pools of sitting water, and because we also got new gutters installed. So you really don't know how the things that you're implementing are really working, and especially being as an out-of-state investor, that you really need to be kind of going there, especially in the first 6 months, right, to make sure that your deal is going the way that you say it's going, and then also making sure that you're communicating all of this to your investors, right? I think what I love about Tony and the Infinity
and
model,
lender,
and lenders, right? So. It's the radical transparency, right? Again, it's in my marriage, it's also in my business, right? It's people want to know about things that they've gone bad, right? It doesn't matter to them that it's gotten bad, but what matters is that, first of all, you acknowledged it and that you're communicating it and you're working to resolve it, right? However it turns out.
I love it. Those are all super tactical, helpful. What do you think now? I want to go back into kind of your guys' lives now. So you guys close the deal. Congratulations. Amazing. Obviously, action takers get it done. So what's the routine? What's the non-negotiable every single day that you did to get to that point?
Like a habit?
A habit, a routine, or an action? What was the KPI?
Well, I'll say we've had some new routines put in because we're working together, married partner, and as
have a baby.
And have a baby. So we had a baby at the same time. So we're you know very we're always coordinating our schedule. So we do have once a week where we are constantly, we're just be like, what do you need from me this week? What do I need from you this week? And we go over our schedule and coordinate who watches the baby, who has to go to Dallas. And so we treat your relationship like a business. It's basically a stand-up, right? So that's a habit I think that we've implemented that has been really fruitful.
Yeah, and then on a personal level, I think try to do date night to make sure that we have that. Yeah, that's also non-negotiable. The scheduling portion, yes, making sure that someone is watching the kid because someone does need to watch like an 11-month-old. So I can't trust the cat yet at this point. And I think, yeah, like Anita said, like just I think one thing I try to do every week is how are we moving forward with our business. So whether it's like helping out with one of our properties, whether it's like working with our finance stuff, or right now it's like tax season. It's like, hey, I'm expecting a tax refund, so I want to get that check sooner rather than later. So I'm trying to get everything done beforehand. Or just right now we're also kind of deal shopping, so doing the underwriting of new properties. So
how many deals are you underwriting now?
Like probably say like a couple a week, probably like 3 or 4. I think like one thing that's been helpful is at least if you have a foundation in doing multifamily or any type of asset underwriting, like most people use like the traditional Excel spreadsheets, right? So, and there's nothing wrong with it. Still love Excel. And I think Excel is very flexible for what you need. But I think there's also, it is very time consuming, very, because you have to go through all the manual inputs, all the assumptions, you have to put the T12 information in there, the rent rolls for the unit mixes, et cetera. So right now, I've been working with Perry Zhang from Cashflow Portal using their AI underwriting tool to be able to kind of just go a little bit quicker. And I think right now that probably saves at least 50% of the time. So if it would take me like an hour, like this can kind of get it done like in maybe 20, 30 minutes. But I will say the disclaimer is making sure that you understand how to do the basics and the foundations of underwriting first before you kind of use like a more advanced tool is the way that I think you should do it. So
Yeah, like you gotta learn how to copyright before you make AI. ChatGPT just copyright
exactly.
for you. Okay. What's next for you guys?
Well, speaking of underwriting, I mean, we're going to be putting together an underwriting group with Tony Lin. And so if you're interested in that, please reach out to us. And you can find us at Anita at GiveRiseCapital.com or William at GiveRiseCapital.com. And then we also have produced a Emerald Point mini series because it's really hard to kind of zoom in on one specific deal. And so we've blown up our acquisition into 5 different episodes and talking about the most important points. And we brought in our partners to speak with us on that. And so that's coming out on February 25th on the SARE Ladies podcast, which you can find on Apple or on Spotify. And then what else? We have...
we're also looking for our next deal. So that's what I was in Dallas the previous week, and then Anita's going there the following week. And so I think she also has some trips planned like in March. Also kind of bringing along some prospective investors or just LPs that want to kind of learn a little bit more. Because I think it was the same thing that Tony did for us, being able to do those property tours, going to be able to kind of go through and look within the units, look outside in the exteriors, like, hey, what's that roof? And hey, even like I remember I sent this picture to Anita with one property we toured of the AC units. I was like, wow. And she was like, that looks great. They're all like neatly structured together.
I called the AC sexy because it was so much nicer than ours. I was like, it's lined, that's hedges that covering it. Anyway.
Yeah.
But we will be at the Old Capitol field trip on February 28th. So if please go, we will see you there. And lastly, we're also planning another conference. This is my next big thing. So biggest event I've ever pulled together, I think.
That's
so
not
far.
a SARE conference.
It is not a SARE conference. It is open to men and women, and but it will be in Vegas in September.
Okay.
And we're looking at September 12th right now. So here's the plug. It'll be fun.
Right. More details to follow.
More details to follow.
Last question for you guys. The theme that I noticed for your guys' rise to rapid success here, maybe not so rapid, but was you adding value to somebody else. So how can someone add value to you guys?
I think for us right now, it's just meeting new people, like it's doing the networking. I think that's something where Anita's much stronger in and much better. Like I think we were actually having a conversation about this earlier. I can do it, but it hasn't always been my favorite thing to do. But I think with where we are in this phase of our life, having people, having a community around us is important in all facets. And so I think that requires to kind of meet new people. And so I think as I've been doing it more and more, whether it's like from the marketing world or talking from like VC or PE firms, or talking to people in real estate, it gives me new ideas. It's kind of gives me new inspiration or new ways or new perspectives to look at things. Or it's just good to be able to build connection with someone that maybe I can add value to them later on, after post conversation. So
Okay.
I welcome anyone with hairy, audacious ideas. I'm in the place in my life where it's just like, if I'm not doing something that doesn't scare the living crap out of me, it's not worth doing anymore.
Ooh.
And so conference scared me, and before a summit scared me, and I've done the one. So I mean, if you have one, you have some crazy audacious idea, and you kind of need someone like us to help you with that or partner with it. Come talk to me. I'm interested in partnering or even just surrounding myself with people that think this big is super important for me.
Yeah, and also Anita really enjoys actually summiting things in real life too. So I think it was like I actually was a few days ago. I was at a networking event, someone's like, my dream vacation is to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And I was like, I actually went up to the guy afterwards, like, yeah, we actually did it. Like, hey, follow up if you need any kind of tips on, porters or the experience, like what type of route to kind of go. So, but definitely an Anita thing that she helps expose me to, because it wouldn't be my first choice.
He told me he only went with me to went up Kilimanjaro because it would be easier to go up than start dating again.
Yeah, I gotta make sure she either we both come back or none of us come back. So,
Buddy. I love it. Well, how can people find you guys?
Anita, ANIT, at GiveRiseCapital.com. And you can find me on SARE Ladies Podcast, SARE, and on Spotify or Apple, or SareLadies.com.
yeah, and then William at GiveRiseCapital.com. You can visit our website, GiveRiseCapital.com, and also follow us on LinkedIn.
Sweet. Well, I will leave all of those linked down below. And then, of course, if you found any value in this episode, because they did a whole masterclass basically on how to get your first commercial deal, please make sure to like and then subscribe, and then share this with anyone else that you are going to partner with to buy that first apartment, because I think you guys share a lot, so I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you having us.
Mike, cheers.
Cheers.
Bang.
My arm might go like